welcome to Faery Whispering Podcast. I'm Claire Casely, and with me today I have a wonderful guest called Ed, who goes under the pen name of C.G. Michaels. He is a very talented illustrator and writer, and he's also a researcher of paranormal and folklore. And we've got a few things to talk about today, including Ed's wonderful art and some fairy encounters, and also Ed has an interest in the crossover between fairies and extraterrestrials as well. So welcome, Ed.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. I'm really honoured to be here and to be asked to be here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you for sending me some of your art as well, which I'll put up for people to see. So you're based in the southeast of England.
So East Anglia, Cambridge.
Yeah, and I'm in the southwest. So we're sort of like opposite ends of the country, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh, something popping up on my computer. Let's turn it off. So I thought I'd start with your artwork, just sort of get into talking about your interest and the themes that you use, and get us into that, talking about the fairies. There are a few images here that really struck me. I think I mentioned to you, I really like the one of, I won't be able to see it on here, but I will put it up on screen for people. The one of the man on the cliff tops.
Yeah.
With the fairies. And I was just intrigued because there's a real atmosphere to that picture. And I was wondering what it was illustrating, because it spoke to me just from the folklore I've read about fairies in the southwest. So who is this character that's wandering on the cliffs?
That's a really good question, actually. And the answer is I'm not entirely sure. I recently just started filling a little sketchbook just full of lots of folklore inspired sketches and just really quick dip pen or fine liner watercolor sketches. And every so often I just get like little images come to mind, and so I just jot them down really.
Yeah.
It could very well be like a developing character or something I decide to take forward, but yeah, at the moment it's just one of those things.
It reminded me, it just brought to mind for me, I suppose everybody, this is the beauty of art, isn't it? Everybody has their own interpretation. But I was thinking about Hunt and his collection of folklore that he put together for Cornwall. Have you read Hunt?
I have, yeah. Actually, went to Cornwall. My brother graduated in Cornwall, so we were there last year for his graduation. And yeah, it's such a really, obviously anybody who's been there knows how beautiful it is.
Yeah.
But it's there's a lot of inspiring places, and yeah, I do have a couple of there's books and books on folklore of the area. So yeah,
it's very beautifully written, isn't it? I'll put that title up for anyone. I can't remember the full name of the book at the moment, but it just made me think of him really as a researcher, maybe wandering on the cliffs, connecting with these stories. I mean, I know that's something that I do and others do, and I know you do as well, where you go to these places that you've read about the folklore, to connect with the folklore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to, rather than just to read it on the page, to really experience it and embody it. Can you give me an example of anywhere that you go to that inspires that, or that you've been to recently that you've connected with?
I think anywhere where there's anywhere where there's lots of nature, that's definitely something that really inspires me, but also history as well. So I think, especially when you have like really ancient places, but places like Cornwall, which are like steeped in sort of myth and legend and folklore, things like that I find really inspiring. And I do like sometimes work from photographs as like a reference. yeah, particularly if there's somewhere that there's like a story or something associated with that area, that's what I find really, really exciting. So, but yeah, everything, it can be anything as well, really. I get inspired by all sorts of things. So I
Mm.
find music very inspiring. But sometimes it could just be like the smell of a location, or
Mm.
just particularly if you're out in nature and like certain times of year as well. So yeah, it can be a mixture of things really, but Cornwall definitely is somewhere very
Mm.
inspiring. I've only really been there once, but it's definitely somewhere I want to go again.
Oh yeah, it's just a magical landscape. I mean, I'm in Devon, and I get so much inspiration from going up to Dartmoor. Have you been to Dartmoor?
I haven't, no. I think we've only
Mm.
been past it, but there's yeah, again another one of those places sort of steeped in, well, magic really, in terms of like the
Mm.
landscape and just character. I feel like certain places have like more of a character, particularly like landscapes have got almost, I think, for an artist or for a creator or writer, they're the perfect like blank canvas in many ways, because you can create anything, anything can happen there. And yeah, I find that quite inspiring. So but
Yeah.
it's also lovely just to be around in nature and things that are completely sort of untouched by human hands, even if people have been living there or on and off throughout the centuries, millennia, or whatever.
Mm. Yeah. By the way, if you hear sounds in the background, like my I'm recording this in my kitchen. Kitchen table. I've got like a table that I do my research on and arts. It's like a dining area. So the other half is my kitchen, and that's where my kids are coming down and getting drinks. And so if you hear any clanking in the background, that's
No,
me.
that's good. Nice, relaxed atmosphere is how it should be.
Yeah, I love that about the landscape, and the landscapes in your images. Have they come from, do you look at references, or is it sort of something, an amalgamation in you from your imagination, where you've, been to places and then made sketches and then brought it together into a final piece from, part of your sort of imagination as well? Or
It's a little bit of everything, to be honest. I would like to get into the habit of doing a little bit more in the way of location drawing and sketching, but I get I'm quite a sort of nervous person at times, and sometimes I get quite excitable, and I find it difficult to go into like beautiful places and just sort of sit down and be still and relax enough to be able to like draw. I'm constantly like sort of checking the time, or just I'm very, very sort of hurried, and
yeah.
I've once I've sort of settled down a little bit and relaxed a bit more, it's a lot easier. So I do tend to like work either from like references, or I'll just make quick sketches, or even
Mm.
just from memory. But yeah, most
Yeah.
of the time it's more like reference photos. But it is important, I think, to go to locations and to get a feel of an area. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think so. There's another image that struck me, because these do feel like real places to me, or places perhaps in the fairy realm.
That's good. I'm obviously doing something right.
Definitely connecting with that other realm. So the other one I really love, I mean, I love all of them, but is this lady, this wise woman,
Oh yeah, yeah.
her cottage and the birds and the fairies around her. I mean, that reminds me of a story about it's a story about an old woman in Tavistock that owned a cottage, and she grew tulips in the garden, and the pixies would come and nurse their babies in the tulips at night. And then the old woman died. Do you know this story?
It sounds familiar, but I could very well be wrong. But no,
Yeah.
go on.
So the old woman died, and new owners came and dug up the tulip patch. which upset the pixies, and they left the garden. But they were so sort of touched by the old woman and her leaving this tulip patch for them that they tended her grave. So the
Oh,
story is that beautiful flowers grew around her grave.
so
So
that's really beautiful. That's like,
yeah,
there's instantly, so things like that, I start to get images like in my mind, and I start to like see how I would want to illustrate something. And it's interesting like how often it can just be like a few words or something, and I'll start to get ideas for stuff like that. So that's going to be one now that I think I'm going to have to like start
yeah.
sketching ideas for.
So it's quite a well-known story. It's recorded by Mrs. Bray in her books, The Borders of the Tamar and the Tavy, which are online. I expect you know about this, but there's a really good online archive of books. There's a couple actually. There's the Internet Archive, which is based in America, and there's loads of old books on there, including William Crossing's Tales of the Dartmoor Pixies. There's another one called Sacred Texts. Have you come across that?
I've definitely heard sacred texts before.
Yeah, Sacred Texts. There's loads of brilliant books on there as well. So, and some of them I didn't even know about that other people have sent my way and said, "Oh, did you know about this one?" I went, oh, wow, it's amazing.
I think that's the thing,
Yeah,
isn't it? That's one of the things that like really fascinates me, is that there's such a wealth of material out there from
yeah,
just like either experiences or researchers or just other writers and
mm,
journalists, that kind of, I almost feel like it kind of gets brushed aside a little bit and lost in. So it's yeah, I feel quite passionate about things like that, just
yeah.
making sure that things don't get forgotten and just lost completely.
I do as well, and I'm really passionate about. I think this is the researcher in me. It sounds like it's the same with you, Ed. Is like I have to go back to the original source and find, right, so what's the origin of this story? Because as you say, these stories can get watered down and reprinted, and it loses the essential, I don't know, the heart of it, the essential heart of it, and maybe some of the detail.
Mm.
Um, and so it's good to go back to, okay, when was this story first recorded? What was, the essence of it then? So yeah, that's why I love to go back. And just coming back to this picture, because the other element of this picture is the cottage, obviously the fairies and the cottage. And the cottages are a real fairy
Yeah,
tale element, aren't they? So they,
yeah.
yeah, they spring up in lots of stories. And yeah, I'd love to know about what your inspiration was for this landscape and this
I
image.
think sometimes, if I'm being honest, I just tend to like add things which I feel like should be there,
Yeah.
and I'd love to like be able to say that it was some sort of um almost like some sort of like divine inspiration, but it's almost like just what I think should be in the picture, and or like trying to get a single picture just to sort of tell a story. And
Mhm.
sometimes that works more successfully than others, and a lot of the time these are just sort of little sketches and um yeah, just little well, pictorial ramblings really.
Mm.
But
As you,
a lot of these have just been,
sorry,
sorry, no, go on.
okay, then, because you work in print as well. You've got some wonderful printmaking that you do, as well as these ones are,
Oh yeah, yeah. So I do like
so
lino as well, which is,
yeah. So this isn't doing them justice. I will put them up for people to see. You've got this beast man, which you can't see on here. I've forgotten who he is. Can you tell?
oh, that's the Wild Man of Orford. So it was entered into the Bungay Black Shuck and Friends Festival, which has just been on exhibition there actually as part of the Black Shuck and Friends Festival, which took place just at the beginning of August, which commemorates the Great Black Shuck event of August. I think it was August the 4th, 1577, when the Black Shuck tore into the church there, and I think killed a couple of people allegedly, and then stormed off to Blytheborough Church, where killed a couple more. I think there's a bit of a debate as to how many people were injured and or killed, but then it left its claw marks in the door at Blytheborough Church. And yeah, so that piece, the Wild Man of Orford, was as part of that, part of the exhibition at the Bell Gallery for the Black Shuck and Friends exhibition. And yes, I was very lucky to sort of be able to take part in that. But the Wild Man of Orford is a story from Orford in the, I think it was the 12th century, where fishermen one day hauled up their nets and found a wild man covered in hair in their nets, and couldn't speak any English, couldn't speak anything that they could understand, and he was taken to the castle when he was imprisoned and then tortured for information. And it's quite a sad story. Eventually he began to sort of gain the trust, sort of fed and relatively sort of looked after, but really wasn't very well looked after at all. He was given things like he'd only have like raw fish, which he would like drink the juices from, and would refuse other things. And eventually he was allowed to exercise in the sea. I think they sort of placed nets and stuff so he couldn't escape. One time he managed to actually escape, and they thought they'd lost him, but then he came back again. And then another time he actually went off, slipped under the nets, and was never seen again. So, and that's the story of the Wild Man of Orford, which I think there's a little bit more to it than that in terms of.
Yeah, wasn't there? Yeah, it's quite sad. I felt quite sad when I saw that picture and the story, because I thought I really felt for this poor wild man that was obviously going about his business, wherever he was living, whether it was swim in the sea, and then he's captured and dragged into our world. This kind of fairy being that's dragged into our world, and yeah, it's I mean, it's a theme that comes up time and again in stories, isn't it? Like right through to King Kong, this captured creature that's brought into our world. And I just thought it's beautifully, the way you described it and illustrated this being was really, I find your work very sort of touching.
Oh, thank you.
To it that's really speaks to the heart. And yeah, it can definitely have that sense that you feel a lot of connection with these stories that you're illustrating. I'd just like to come back to the Black Shuck as well. For people that don't know what that is, it's otherwise known as the black dog, isn't it, in other parts of the country? Is that right?
It has a few names. There's like there's it's some there's Black Shuck, Old Scarf, I think is one. There are all sorts of different names for it, but it is essentially basically a big black shaggy haired dog, sometimes described with like red glowing eyes, size of saucers. Sometimes, but I mean, it's also seen the world over. But I think it's very typically sort of it's certainly typically East Anglian folklore. It's in a lot of folk stories, and there's all sorts of tales about it being like an omen of death, or something to warn people that something bad's about to happen, a protector. There are stories of people who have like been walking home, for example, and they've heard something like they've padding along beside them in the dark, or they might have seen like an outline or something like that, and then found that they were being protected sort of after the fact, because there was like just happened to be a band of muggers or something lurking in the dark. And yeah, so it's a really fascinating legend or story. Yeah, but the people do claim to see it still even today, so it's again another one of those really fascinating.
Yeah, do you know of any recent sightings, or don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything that you, I mean,
Do you know, as soon as I said that, I thought, actually, I can't think of any like more recent ones, but I know I've definitely, I mean, if you just sort of Google search, you can tend to come up with a few that are in like the last 10-20 years or so.
yeah.
But yeah, people do see it. There was, in fact, when I was researching this the other day, and because I didn't realize there was there's also the white shuck as well, which I had no knowledge of. And but that some is similarly seen as like a good thing or a bad thing. And there was a sighting of one in Suffolk, in Beccles, I think, in the early 70s. In the cemetery, there was a lady who was dog walking this big white shaggy haired dog, and it faded before her. But anything like that I find fascinating. And in some cases, the more vague the story, or the more vague the account or the eyewitness testimony, I find that all the more interesting, because I kind of think if you're going to create something or invent something, you'd add a few more details, I think, or you'd embody it a little bit more, you give it like a purpose. But when people are telling like a ghost story, for example, there's usually a history to the sighting, there's usually a reason for the sighting, there's usually like a name or an incident that happened that led to it, that gives the actual story some purpose and some meaning. And so whenever people come up with things and come up with stories, or just say, oh, this happened to me, and it's very vague and very unusual, I find that really, really fascinating. Like, there's particularly if there's no sort of real reason as to why that happened, and if it's seen or experienced by more than one person at the same time, then that's all the more fascinating. And things like that really capture my imagination, particularly as a creative as well.
Yes, and yeah, I agree. Something just came to sometimes happens. Something about talking. Oh, that's it. So this podcast, what I found, the kind of spooky but not spooky thing, I suppose it's all to do with synchronicity and stuff, is talking to guests. And every guest I talk to, and probably, from our conversation as well, there'll be a piece of information that person will say that will link to something else, either somebody else that I've spoken to, or a story that somebody shared, or perhaps a place that I've been to the day before, or that I go to later. And it really interests me, all of these synchronicities, like you say, with these stories that are people tell from the heart, and you receive, and there might be information in there that perhaps doesn't sink in at the time, and then later you'll go, oh, I'll go, oh, so and so mentioned that when they were talking to me, and I'll see something or talk to someone else, they'll say more about it. Do you find, that's kind of going off on a tangent maybe to what we were talking about, but do you find that with your research, that your research connects you with, you find some information that you're interested in, and then that will lead you to another person or another piece of information, and it's like unraveling?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, that definitely does happen. And I think it's a shame, because for so many people like ridicule either like the paranormal or the supernatural, whatever you want to call it, and folklore, a lot of people don't seem to have time for it. And I feel that always makes me sad, because I think the more you look into it, the more interesting it becomes, whether it's purely from an academic point of view, or you actually are invested in terms of like your beliefs, your own beliefs. There's always something there that's, I feel like it's noteworthy, or it's interesting, and yeah, things really do link and relate. And I remember I first UFOs and
Yes.
aliens were like my sort of my big interest when I was probably around. I remember being at school, and there was one book, and I've actually still got it, and it was all of UFOs, and I had these like 3 beautifully illustrated UFOs on the front cover, and with a group of people sort of walking up to them. And when I saw that book, I loved it, and I just devoured it. Any free time I had, like in the classroom, anytime we got time just to read, I'd go straight for that book, and I'd just sit down and read it cover to cover. And I think the teachers sort of recognized this. One of the teachers, when I actually left the school, found it and gave it to my mum to make sure that I had it. So I've still sort of I've got it still, and it's like, it's just completely fallen apart, but it's a really sort of special book to me. And that was for years and years and years. That became like, that was my thing. That was my go-to thing. And even though I was interested in other aspects of like the paranormal, things like ghosts and even like fairies, like Bigfoot, things like that, it was always UFOs. And I never liked the idea that they could kind of all occupy the same world. So when people had sort of, or came up with stories which seemed to combine them in some way, that always made me so uncomfortable. And I always love everything having its own little box. And I think that's one thing that, as looking into like these subjects, you don't really get you don't have the luxury of that sort of choice. And they often overlap in ways that kind of make us sort of question everything. And I feel like there are clues as well to everything. Like energy seems to play a massive role in everything paranormal related. It all, to me, it all comes back to energy in one way or another. I'm not a scientist. I don't, I don't have that sort of expertise and that kind of experience. But and I'd love to know more. I'd love to be intelligent enough to be able to know more. But I think it's just fascinating the way that so many of these things relate to one another. And energy seems to be the really big thing which is linking everything
And
together, whether it's like, it's just sort of some, I don't know if that sort of rings true with you, if that makes any.
well, I mean, it does. I'm trying to, there's various things going on in my mind when I have experiences. So I'll give an example. So yesterday, I interviewed another guest yesterday morning. We're talking about certain things, and then I went out for a walk with my son in the afternoon. I tend to follow my intuition when I go to places, and I said to my son, "Oh, let's go up there." And it's basically somewhere near here where it's actually private land, but I've been up there before. There's a pathway that other people have taken, and it brings you up to this beautiful view. Well, it's beautiful sort of field that I've seen deer in before, and it's just woodland all the way up this hill. And as we were going up, seeing all these, because I tend to look out for fairy doors in trees, so there's all these fairy doors in the bottoms of trees. And then I do these mirror photos. I don't know if you've seen them.
I
I see,
yeah, I love them.
like half an image. I think, oh, that light looks interesting on that tree. I can always see a face in that, or half a face, and then I'll so it's with purpose. I'm not randomly taking pictures. I see things, I think, oh, that's a bit of a key to a full image. So I was doing that, and then got home. I posted the photos on Facebook and in my group. And the person I've been speaking to in the morning said, oh, well, that links to that symbol you were talking about. It's like the Illuminati symbol with the eye on it. And I'd spoken about another symbol that I'd seen, which is a rune called Degas, or Degus, I think that's how you pronounce it, which means awakening. And so all these things linked together. And I thought, okay, so is that because I was in this uplifted state of mind and consciousness, and I was almost creating that experience, or is it because I'm able to receive that experience because perhaps my third eye is more open and I'm seeing things in the other world? So it's like, are we creating these experiences? Are they in another dimension? Is it a combination of both? So yeah, that's my sort of take on things. And the energetic thing, I think, is to do with the possibility of other dimensions, and that we're connecting to them with our energy field and with consciousness. That's how I don't have the answers, but that's something I'm exploring at the moment.
That's the thing, though, isn't it? I think we just all need to be as curious as children are, I think, with the world, because I think humanity seems to feel like we know everything, we know all there is to know, and we've been here such a comparatively short space of time. I think we still need to have that childlike wonder about learning
Yeah.
all there is to know about the world and how it all works. And I mean, it almost seems like a stupid thing to say that it's all about energy, because I mean, everything's energy. But I feel like the more looking into it and reading it, the more that there is still to learn about energy, different types of energy, things, how energy, links everything together, and particularly the things that we can't see necessarily. And I find that incredibly fascinating. The idea, particularly, that there are people who have experiences of the world in ways that a lot of people don't, who are people who see the world differently, or the fact that there are people who can, go around experiencing things, and that's normal for them, and yet for everybody else that's not normal, and I find that really, really fascinating. It's almost as much about the people having these experiences and their lives as it is about the actual experiences that they're having. For me, that's what I find really, really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
There's
I'm interested in your interest in this crossover between fairies, as we're on that sort of subject of things crossing over. So you're interested in how potentially how extraterrestrial experiences cross over with fairy experiences, and I'd like to know anything that you researched about that.
and again, this is they've and again, it's one of those things that it never really it still doesn't sit comfortable with me, because I want things to be separate. I want there to be, I'm quite happy to entertain the idea of several different alien races visiting Earth, engaging with people and the planet, but I kind of want the fairy realm to be separate from that, and yet there seems to be so many different similarities, and there's a definite overlap. And one of the things is often poltergeist activity. So people who experience UFOs, or claim to have experienced alien abduction, for example, it's not uncommon to read about cases where poltergeist activities recorded in the house or experienced in and around the people shortly after the event, and that sometimes can happen in like fairy encounters as well.
Yes. Yeah.
That's unusual, and I feel like that, to me, that's kind of, it would be so much simpler if it was an entirely separate phenomena, and you could say, right, well, that belongs to the ghost world, okay, this belongs to the fairy world, this belongs to the UFO. And in my sort of neat and tidy mind, that's how I'd like it to be, but it's something else which is linking everything. The same with like orbs and lights, you know, energy, that sort of, when you see things, that's quite common in and for people with having UFO experiences, and also fairy experiences, and, you know, to say nothing of ghostly experiences. And I find that really, really fascinating. There's a really famous case in it was 21st of August 1955 in Kelly, Kentucky. It's sometimes known as the Hopkinsville Goblin incident, and this really captured my imagination as a child, because it was a family in a tiny hamlet, which is a few miles from the town of Hopkinsville. It's more or less, I think, in the middle of nowhere. They saw like they saw a UFO, had a UFO experience, but then encountered these 3 feet tall, long armed goblin-like creatures surrounding their home, and they were pretty much terrorized for the most of the night with it, climbing in, like they saw these things climbing in trees. They could hear them scuttling over the roof of their house. It's quite a famous case in ufology. And yeah,
Was that in Helia? That was mentioned in Helia, wasn't it?
I think it probably yeah, it would. I have seen Helia, and it was, I think it probably would have been mentioned
Yes.
in there, almost certainly. It's one of those things that more or less any UFO documentary, it will come up because it's such a unique case. But they've and I've seen so many different artists renderings over the years, and it does have that sort of really exciting kind of, like, it certainly captured my imagination growing up. It was things like that which I just found absolutely fascinating. But yeah, I find that really, 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 really strange. But in a way that just kind of, it this world, did it belong to that world? Is it something completely different, or are these worlds actually all just one? You know, are we just, what is going on here? But yeah, some of the things that they'd reported, like apparently when they tried shooting at them, the bullets would just bounce off, and they would float. It wouldn't seem to sort of affect them. Whenever they approached the house, they apparently had their hands above their heads.
Wow.
But you sometimes come across that in Bigfoot, Sasquatch encounters, and or I've read that in various parts of the world where people have like seen thing earlier. When you reading the other stuff, you sometimes come across details which you think, well, hang on, I've read that before, or this has happened in this incident, and you kind of think there's definitely a link, whether is people are recording and reporting the same sort of things and the same sort of incident.
Yeah. And
Even, you know, thousands of miles apart, and I find that really, really fascinating.
Because then they obviously are aware of us if they're using that sort of universal symbol for surrender, aren't they? I mean, it's suggesting they're surrendering, that perhaps they want to connect. You know, I've heard of other people that have had fairy experiences that have been quite frightening. Actually, I listened to one last night. It was posted, I've forgotten the podcast now, Strange Familiars, and it's called The
Oh yeah,
Gnome. Have you listened to that one? And it's a man talking about his,
I haven't listened to that one, but no.
yeah, he had a gnome encounter when he was a child. But this gnome came into his bedroom and knocked a book. I think it's off like his bedside table. And he was terrified, as he would be as a little boy, seeing this gnome. This gnome had a bit of a scary experience, but didn't feel it was there to terrify him. But because it's an otherworldly being appearing in your bedroom, it's a terrifying, potentially traumatizing experience for someone. And I'm just wondering whether it's our interpretation of these beings, intending malice. I know people have had really scary experiences, do feel that, but like with the Hopkinsville Goblins, were they trying to communicate with this family rather than terrorize them? And were they, it's like poltergeist activity, it's like playful trying to get attention. Were they trying to get attention rather than, you know, to scare the family?
That's the thing, isn't it? It's the ultimate question. I think with some of these really, really famous cases, particularly as like a researcher, you just think, oh, what if only I could have been there, or if only this had happened, and this was only in 1955, so it wasn't really all that long ago. And if it happened almost all of that
Mm.
family, and we'd have other means of trying to identify what they were, or at least see what they saw.
Yeah.
And I things like that I just find endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Talking about it.
Well, yeah. Is there anything else that you've come across that has made you sort of think about this crossover? Any other cases, or is that the main sort of one for you?
I think that's the main one for me that stands out at the moment. I mean, as soon as we stop recording and finish, I'll probably think of dozens of
Yeah.
others. But it's like, in terms of like as an example, I think that's probably there's the Dover Demon,
Mm. Oh yeah, I'd like
Boston,
to.
Massachusetts, in 1977.
All right, I'd like to hear about that one. Yeah. Mm.
I think that's the date. But that was like I think that had multiple witnesses. But that was 3 to 4 feet tall, quite spindly, really huge bulbous head, peach coloured skin, with a sort of like a rough texture to it. But it didn't have any like visible nose, mouth, or ears, but just like glowing bright orange eyes. And that was sort of seen with like, I think it was gripping onto a wall. There's a really famous like illustration that accompanies this, which is often seen whenever it's spoken about on TV, or it's often referred to in articles and stuff. But yeah, there are a lot of things like that where people sometimes actually you do come across cases like that when you think, well, actually, what was it there? It's interesting how we put things into certain boxes. So just because somebody saw like a light, for example,
Mm.
either before or after an experience, it's then sort of classed as like a UFO experience. But then you see fairy lights and orbs in fairy encounters as well. But
Yeah.
you also see them in Sasquatch, Bigfoot encounters.
Mm.
And there's like things like that are really, really interesting. And the fact that like the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch community can be so heavily divided as to what Sasquatch, what Bigfoot actually is. There's some people believe
Yeah.
it is just purely an undiscovered primate, just flesh and blood. Other people like I said, no, it's far more spiritual than that. It's actually an entity or a being that we can't even possibly understand because of other things that have happened. And I find that really interesting. You've got like, whilst most of the world will just turn a blind eye and ridicule everything like that, you've got a community full of believers that are at loggerheads
Yeah, about the
with each
details.
other because they're disagreeing over what it is that people are experiencing. Yeah, about the details. But I think it's those details that it's all in the details. I think all the details of any sort of paranormal event are the things that we should be taking note of and paying more attention to, because I think these are the clues which will one day help us understand what it is that people are experiencing. Things like, the things like there being like a sudden silence where everything goes completely of an otherwise quite busy forest or woodland area, where all the sound of the birds stops, the sound of the crickets just stops, and that's quite common in a lot of paranormal. I think that's a clue as to what is happening. And like the smell of sometimes you get like horrible smell of like sulfur in certain like ghostly experiences, but also Sasquatch and Bigfoot experiences too.
Yeah, so what's happening?
Yeah, little things like that, or the temperature dropping is a classic one. That's a sign of something that's happening, and I feel like they're really important details but also really really fascinating as well, and just other things that are kind of just always really intriguing to me.
Let's see, someone interviewed Irish paranormal investigator. I think he was on. He's been on Paul Sinclair's Truth Proof a couple of times. Gosh, I wish I could remember his name. But I think he's written a book recently. And there's Joshua Cutchin's amazing book. Can't remember the title now.
Yeah,
Explores that kind of idea of everything being interconnected in some way. And then there's this other researcher whose name I'll have to look it up, and I'll put it up for people, who's written a book recently about a similar thing, where he's talking about how this phenomena has different faces. And I'm wondering that as well. I mean, that's something else I wonder. I wonder if is it because I feel a connection to fairies, that when I have an experience, I'm seeing it as fairy. Is it all because it's coloured by our belief, and the fact that people have religious experiences with whoever they believe in? And then there's people invested in Sasquatch, and they're having Sasquatch experiences. The whole sort of spectrum of paranormal experiences. Are we experiencing what we're invested in? Is it about intention? Is it about our, it comes back to this idea of consciousness and our belief systems. I don't know. Or is it something out there that's presenting to certain people that believe or have a connection with them, so they're coming forward to us in that way?
it is
Yeah.
the whole fascinating. It's like it is honestly one of these like topics that I could just sit down and just talk about for hours.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many different like layers to it. It's like I often ask like the same sort of questions, because I think it does make you wonder as well, like particularly if there's like something that people are seeing in and around the home, for example. There was a case, I remember reading a case once, and I don't know if it's in Marjorie Johnson Seeing Fairies, or if it's in one of Janet Bald's books. She talked about a couple who were sitting in their living room, and then all of a sudden they both see a tiny little figure run across the table and then hide behind a jam jar. And when they go to look look for it, there's nothing there, but they both see. And things like that, when two people see something out of the blue like that, you think, I mean, that to me is like a typical fairy encounter, because
Yeah.
it doesn't, I wouldn't describe that as alien, because I mean, it's alien to what we would expect. It's alien to our world, but I wouldn't class it as sort of in the UFO alien category. It's that to me is a very definite like fairy encounter, even if what it actually is very closely related to a lot of the other sort of phenomena that we discuss within the paranormal. But yeah, things like that, absolutely fascinating. And it's not just one instant either. You sort of read that time and time again. I've heard all sorts of people recount their experiences of things like that, or just going into a room and then just sort of seeing a little person run across the living room floor and then hide behind a couch, and particularly when it's experienced by more than one person. Like, just stories like that are an endless source of inspiration and fascination to me.
Yeah, they are interesting, aren't they? And those are very unexpected. They're not in no way. I mean, sometimes people don't just have no knowledge or interest in fairies, or perhaps any of the other phenomena we've spoken about, and they just have that experience, and it's like, so what's that all about? That suggests that it's something that's from another dimension that's coming into our dimension and presenting itself for some reason, or just that we just happen to see. For whatever reason, there's some kind of doorway that opens between the realms, and then we have that experience. And
Yeah,
that's where the landscape comes in for me, because I think, well, it's got to be something to do with the place or the time of year or the atmospheric conditions, what's going on in the cosmos at the time, whether there's sun flares, all those kinds of things maybe come into a sort of a perfect mix at that specific time for that doorway to open.
yeah.
Example. Have you heard about? 'Cause it's something I'm going to do an episode on. Spoken to a few people about time slips, and also,
Oh, yeah. There's some incredible.
yeah. Have you got any of those that you've come across?
I definitely do. There's, I mean, as soon as I think of time slips in Britain,
Yeah.
you just sort of automatically think of Liverpool, which seems to be like just a hotspot of paranormal activity and time slips. But there are some in and around, certainly like the East Anglia region as well. And I'm just trying to think of, I've got them written down somewhere. Just find my notebook. But there's let's see. Because there's somewhere in it's funny because it's one of those things I've literally within the last couple of weeks or so just been looking into.
I really do.
But like it's funny, we were just saying, weren't we, about things crossing over, and
Yeah. Yeah, time slips, also phantom buildings, because there's a few of those around here, that phantom cottages that people have seen.
there's the Kersey time slip in autumn of 1957. William Lang, Michael Crowley, and Ray Baker. I think it's either Baker or Barker. Can't read my own writing now. Anyway, that was a time slip to medieval England.
Oh,
And I'm trying to think. Yeah, you can tell how unprepared I am for this, because it's literally just pages of notes I've got from like online.
you could send it to me afterwards, and I'll just put it
It's
in.
a really exciting thing. There's a village in Suffolk with 20 known instances of time slips.
Wow, that's amazing.
And yeah, I think what I'll do is once we get off of here, I'll send you like links and stuff to them, because it'll just be what I really don't want to do is start reading out stuff and then getting all the details wrong. But
No, that's fine. It's
there's
fine.
some really, yeah, there are quite a few. Like
Mm,
Lost Villages are quite exciting as well. Beth and Briggs Miller, I know, takes an
yeah.
interest in Lost Villages.
Oh yes. I, I wonder if she's done any episodes.
I quite like things like
Mm.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I must look up her podcast and see, because she's got two, hasn't she?
Yeah,
And just see if she's done anything about lost villages. That's another interest of mine, because there's one up, I don't know if you know, at the off of Land's End, Cornwall. There's supposed to have been a lost land called Lioness that was connecting Land's End to the Isles of Scilly. So it's like a whole 30 miles worth of land that's been lost at some point. It's like a Cornish kind of Atlantis, really. Yeah.
so yeah, that's like another exciting topic. We get on
Yeah.
to Atlantis, like a whole new whole
I,
new can of worms.
I know. I was talking about Atlantis yesterday, actually, just in reference to UFOs and how some people seeing them coming from the sea, and whether these could be Atlanteans, what used to be called Atlanteans, or whether UFOs are coming from outer space, or whether they're coming from the Earth or beneath the sea. What's your
It's definitely, well, I mean, there's no doubt about the fact that you do get like underwater UFOs or USOs, as they're
mm,
sometimes called, but now like obviously
mm,
more UAPs as well. And there's so many different words for everything now. It's difficult to keep up. But
yeah, they keep changing them, don't they? Same.
there's
Yeah.
some really fascinating accounts, and I mean that is it is a definite like it is a it is something that does make you I think that's another thing about this topic in general.
Mm,
Once you feel like you're getting somewhere,
mm,
something else will happen, which just sort of, you just think you're starting to get a grasp on everything, and
mm,
then you get new information which just leaves you feeling completely out of your depth again. You think, oh, we're never going to get to the bottom of this. And I feel like the number of like USO
mm.
encounters and things that people have seen and experienced is just is overwhelming. And some like the videos you see online of just these craft, whatever they are, just
Yeah.
sailing along and just going straight underwater, and then being able to sort of track them still. And
Mm,
it's incredible. And then you get underwater encounters with like certain beings and things like that. And that's before we've even like started discussing things like mermaid sightings,
mm,
which people are still reporting them today,
mm,
and other sort of water beings. So it's fascinating. But there is like, but again, there's another link between like UFOs and fairies, and Atlantis is one of those things. One of the things I've started looking into more recently is past life regression,
ah,
and
right.
particularly the work of Dolores Cannon.
Yeah.
And there are so many people that um, mention Atlantis or even like Lemuria
Mm, mhm,
in some of these regression sessions, and it does make you think. What is it that are people just conjuring this up? Is it just sort of like a wishful thinking? That people forget they've read an article or seen something, and then they're just recounting it. And is that what's happening? They're just making it up, or is there something more to it? And what's linking everyone together? And why should one person in one part of the world come up with information that's so similar to someone in another part of the world? even though they've been raised, you know, completely differently in different cultures, different societies, why are they having or coming up with these similar stories? And again, whatever your views on it, whether you're a hard skeptic or you're a passionate believer, things like that I find really, really fascinating. So
Yeah,
but yeah,
it is, you know, why, you know, past life, children that claim to have had past lives, and then they track down there was an actual person that had that job or name, and particular details. That is really interesting. And the whole thing about Atlantis as well is, so I recently spoke to a guest about Egypt, and she told me about a researcher. Oh gosh, sorry, I'm not very good at remembering names.
that's right, neither am I. That's why I make notes.
This researcher, he's been like going back and forward. He's American. He's been going back and forward to Egypt for about 40 odd years, living with the Egyptians that live in the village at the edge of the pyramids. So it's like called the Pyramid Village. And they have lots of stories, ancient stories about that area, and that the pyramids, according to them, according to his research, go back millions of years. You know, not the thousands, not the 7,000 or whatever it is this generally accepted sort of framework. He said we've got to think bigger, we've got to think millions of years, and that at one time the pyramids were underwater because there's evidence of sea creatures in the blocks. So how did they get there? You know, because so they must have been submerged underwater at some time. So he's taken a kind of a model of the Earth, computer model, and looked at all the different sea levels and worked out, well, these must have been built several 100,000 years ago or millions of years ago rather than 10,000 or whatever is the accepted date at the moment. So that's one theory. So could people be having these memories of that time where, you know, not back millions of years, you know, in our history, maybe a civilization before us, before, maybe he was saying, well,
That
maybe,
is really fascinating.
yeah, maybe we are the extraterrestrials. Maybe we've come here after this previous civilization. So when you start thinking those bigger sort of chunks of time, then there is more possibilities to what is going on and who we are. And yeah, I love that. I love thinking outside the box, like, well,
Yeah, I do. I think I really honestly believe that that is the way forward. Like whether it's something, again, you know, whether it's something you are very skeptical about, or whether it's something that you actually do like believe yourself. We need to have that sort of open-minded, that, you know, that curiosity and that and thinking outside the box, like you said, because I think that's how we learn. It's, you know, it's always thinking, well, what if, or could this be, or is this possible, or, you know, and I think that's key to our progress, and key to learning new things, and just getting to the bottom maybe of some of the things that people experience. It's a definite, and also like one thing I didn't realize, past life, sometimes people recount lives that they've lived on other planets or as other beings, and I've even seen like fae beings, nature spirits, being something that people recount sometimes in past life regression. And, you know, that was something I had no idea about until just probably a few months ago, and I find that really, really fascinating. I even know a couple of people who have had experiences like that, or feel that, or things have either been said to them, or they've either had experiences and or dreams where they feel like they may have lived before but not on Earth. And that is just, I mean, it's an incredible thing to think about.
Mm.
And yeah, it kind of, it's a whole new, things like this just like
Yeah.
really excite me all the time, just like if I'm just writing an essay, or if I'm just creating like a story or like an image, just things like this are just, it's really exciting to me. They just really get the juices flowing.
Yeah. And I really feel that could be possible because we are spirit. And that's my belief. We're not, these bodies are just a service while we're here in this time and place. And who's to say that we've not come from elsewhere, or from very long way back in the past, or another dimension. I like you. I like to keep an open mind about the nature of reality and who we are and why we're here and what it's all about, and to stay curious about these things and open to possibilities. I think it just makes, not only does it make life a lot more interesting,
Absolutely.
it brings in being creative person like you are, Ed, and like I am as an artist, writer myself. It's we are, creative people are the ones that have helped to move the world forward in lots of ways as well, and beliefs and understanding. And yeah, long may we keep doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another thing. It's really, I've got so much respect, Claire, for people like you, yourself, and other researchers as well. And we could just be here all day rattling off like a whole
Yeah.
list. But I think it's such an important thing to do, to be sort of championing not just like the subject, but also like the people that are having these experiences, and people that are brave enough to come forward and talk about and share things which are really actually quite private and personal. And that's something that I'm definitely really, really passionate about, is just kind of championing people
Yes.
and sharing their story and their experiences in a way that just kind of says to everybody else, like, look, this is going on, or this is someone's experience of what it means to be alive. This is someone's experience of daily life. This is what somebody has to discuss, and to someone lives through. And I find that really, really, like, I just find that really important.
It is important, and the
The
more people
kind
like,
of
yeah, that is really important, Ed, and the more people like us that are listening to people and validating what they're saying. So I'm interested now about where you're going, about your work, and where people can find you. So you're mentioning this work that you're hoping to do with validating people's stories in some way. Are you going to be doing that creatively, or writing about them, and where can people connect with you and your work?
so yeah, it's only really within the last several months that I've started to I've always been a passionate, like, creative. I've always loved illustration. I've always been like loved art ever since I was sort of, from a very early age. Art and drawing was something that I always wanted to do. And it was about the same sort of time that my interest in like UFOs and the paranormal, fairies, everything else like that also came into play. And I don't know why it's taken me 30 odd years to sort of get to the stage where I kind of marry the two together. Because another thing I always really enjoyed was like collating information, like at school. And whenever we had like a project and we had to like research or make like do like a brainstorm or anything like that, or mind map or anything, I used to love going through books and just making like little notes of where I got things from. So I don't know why it's taken me so long to think, well, actually, I could combine all of this together. But yeah, so it's only the last few months that I've started to do that. So I'm working on a series of essays on mainly at the moment on fairy experiences, people who are having fairy experiences.
Wow.
But that's, you know, it could be sort of anything really. So I'm kind of my hope is to try and create like a body of work which will at the very least sort of help celebrate people who have these experiences, but also to kind of highlight the fact that people are having them and record them for sort of future researchers, really, just to have something to sort of so that people can look back on. And just I really like the idea of recording everything and just championing people. So that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment.
Wow.
In between other creative projects as well, because I like, if anyone checks out my work, it's quite varied. I've got my yeah, I've got my hands full.
Yeah, so where can people find you?
I definitely keep myself busy, but
On your
so
Instagram?
yeah,
Yes.
once you can go to my website is now updated, which is www.cgmichaels.com. That's all one word. But I'm also on Instagram under CG Michaels illustration, or CG Michaels Parafolk, as in paranormal folk. But there's pretty much links to everything anyway. But that's but yeah, that's pretty much where to find. There's also got links to my Etsy as well. So
Oh, fab. Yes, the Etsy. I mean, I really recommend you go and check out Ed's beautiful art, because I mean, I've been seeing your sketchbooks recently that you've been posting on Instagram, and your sketchbook pages themselves are just gorgeous. I mean, if you could
oh,
combine,
thank you.
yeah, I could see that combined together with these essays you're talking about, the fairy essays, into just like a beautiful collectible book or series of books, maybe.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's
Yeah.
definitely on the cards.
Oh, thank you for your time today. I mean, I could talk to you for ages.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Maybe I'll have to come on again for
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be more than happy any time at all.
thank you ever so much, Ed, and